Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for joining today. I am so excited that we get the opportunity to celebrate Star Wars Day a couple days early this year. So, of course, May the 4th is coming up this weekend on Saturday. But we figured it would be a little bit fun to bring this a couple days forward to really celebrate, but also talk about this awesome world of Star Wars in honor of Star Wars Day and how that relates to data governance. So I can't think of a better or more fun way to kick off the month and kick off Star Wars Day than talking about data governance. So let's get into it. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Nieberding. I am the Director of Product Marketing here at MetaRouter and joined today with my good friend who is, I think, the data governance / musical data master. I'll let you introduce yourself quickly. Yeah. We're trying here, right? Yeah. It sounded good.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tiankai. I'm the data strategy and data governance lead for Thoughtworks Europe. A big Star Wars fan myself. I'm actually recovering from a cold a little bit right now. So yesterday I sounded like Darth Vader, which I luckily don't sound like anymore today, which is good. But I'm very excited to actually bring these worlds together of ultimate Star Wars fandom and data governance passion. So this is going to be a cool session.
I'm super pumped. So let's make this fun, right? Let's talk about two things here. One, I'm going to say this is the meme that kicked it off, right? This is what really got me excited. Master of memes, I think we both love this. But I saw this on LinkedIn and I was like, we have to talk, right? We have to talk about this. It really hit home. And I have a feeling for many of us, of those joining us, well, it did as well. So there is what I'm going to call this dark side of data collection, right? So let's think, for example, when you talk about how you're tracking that data, right? Are you using third-party tags to track it? How are you collecting data? Where are you storing it? How are you routing it, right? There's kind of all of this stuff that goes into that data collection piece. And for so many of our customers and people we talk to, there's kind of this dark side where you don't always know what tags are on your site, what data they're tracking, where are they routing that data? How are they routing it? Where are those tags then sending, like what tags do those tags have? It is a weird chain effect. And even, of course, like selling your data, right? When you talk about where you actually send that data, like that's a whole, kind of dark side of things too. I'd love to hear, Tiankai, your thoughts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think from a very human level, right? If I give you my property to take care of it, then I'm trusting you with it, and I hope that nothing bad happens to it, right? And I think if we think about it, data is like our property. It's very personal many times, right? And if we are giving it to other people or companies, then we hope that they're taking care of it, right? And selling it for like not good reasons, for example, or leaking it, it's all not great. So the fact that it's been collected and then we don't know what actually happens to it is truly the dark side of it all. Also, maybe referring to that meme, what I found really interesting is that in the movie, of course, everybody knows that they're villains, like Darth Vader the villain, and Luke is a little bit against him, until the twist is that he is his father, right? Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen Star Wars yet. I don't think so. But the other way around it, right, is like, I trusted you with my data and you sold it. No, why did you do that, right? That is the other way around that. So I kind of was happy with that twist as well, that it was actually breaking the trust instead of saying we were on the opposite sides, now we're actually on the same side. Now it's we were on the same side, now you're on the opposite side. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can't ring more true. And I think that's why it's just the perfect foundation for this conversation today as we dig into really what I'm going to call that kind of crossbeam, right? Of the forces here. You've got that side of data collection, but you also have to very much keep in mind the other side, which is that data governance piece, making sure that the data you're collecting is secure, is compliant, is respecting the user's, consent preferences and privacy and all of those key things that go into that data collection story. And that intersection is what your data strategy should be, right? A privacy forward, privacy centric way to collect and route your data. So, of course, today we'll be talking through some of the most beloved Star Wars characters and some quotes and how that applies to data governance. So I'd love to hear in the chat if anyone has ideas or thoughts or maybe hopes for what kind of quotes they'll see in today's conversation. So feel free to put that in the chat, and kudos if you get one of them right. I think prior to this, Tiankai, like we had a couple winners. I think a couple
we did.
Right. So
we actually did. Yeah.
Excited to see what comes of that. Do you have a favorite side? that you would choose if you had to be?
Yeah, I would say maybe, I mean, of course, I'm on the data governance side. That is what I'm passionate about. But I think from a strategic point of view, that raises another question to data collection, right? So if you think about it, you collect data, and data governance ensures that the collected data is protected and it's being dealt with in the right way, and that you put guardrails on it. But data strategy actually establishes if we need to collect the data in the first place, right? So I think the dark side on the other side of collection is data hoarding, where you collect endless amounts of data, but you're never actually going to use it. Then why even put yourself through that risk, right? So maybe be more specific on what you're driving value with, and then collect only data for that drives value. You don't need to take care of the other things so much, but rather have like a use case driven approach to collect data in the right way. And then also you have less data governance efforts by
Yeah.
defining the right data strategy.
I think that's hugely important because yes, as your volume grows, so does your risk. And thinking about that and the quotes that we'll talk through today is like kind of how do you think about that up front, right? Like how do you think about yes, your use case driven data collection strategy, but how do you make sure that data governance is a key part of that collection story and not just an afterthought, right? Because you don't want to wait until there is a risk or an issue or an, something that has been flagged to then think about data governance because that by that time you're probably already in triage and we don't want that. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
let's see. We've got one Aaron with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, I don't think that's a Star Wars quote. I think that's a Spider-Man quote, but I'll take it anyway. I mean, that's something I quote very often in data governance for sure. So you're
Yeah.
definitely also attacking my my fandom for Marvel stuff as well.
Right. We're same but different. Still
Yeah.
very true. I feel like
Yes.
we could do a whole nother series on that specifically, but I think to the point we just spoke about, right, is with great data and great amounts of data comes great responsibility as well. And so
Absolutely.
100% applicable. And I think that's a great one to call out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's jump into it. The first quote we have here, I think this was one that had been called out previously. Do or do not. There is no try from Yoda. So let's hear it. How do we think this relates to data governance? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, it's about me. I thought you were asking the audience. No, no. Okay.
True.
No, so I mean, in a way, I think about the scene, right, where I think Luke is in that Jedi training that he's doing in the swamps there somewhere, and really, there's a lot about overthinking it. And when I think about overthinking in a data governance manner, right, it's more about you can try to plan it all out, and you can apply data governance to everything in the whole company, but you're never going to get it acted upon, right? So it's really about maybe starting smaller and start just doing things, learning from it, and then over time scale it out to more and more. So really, instead of a big bang approach, trying to more have a let's say thin slice approach, we call it, for example, to then like tackle the whole thing step by step over time.
I love that. So this idea of like really not overthinking things is I think sometimes a big fear that people have, right? With when they're bringing a kind of data governance conversation to the table or maybe even a strategy, I do feel like there's this sense of like I don't know if I want to say fear or maybe lack of confidence in bringing that to the table. And I think that really is a key part of the conversation, right? It's like things are going to change. There are things that are going to happen. There might be new regulations, all these things going on. So this idea of like thinking big but starting small and practical and focused, and not overthinking it, that those two things can really help in delivering that data governance conversation, but also making sure that what you're focused on, what you're implementing, the project that you have at hand is really going to drive the needle, and there is like a clear beginning and end to that, right? Like data governance can seem really broad and big at first, but like you got to do it well or don't do it at all, right? If you're
Absolutely.
gonna half do it, you're still going to have a problem. So kind of
Yeah.
make sure that you commit, that you do it, but you have a clear strategy to do it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one way to get started, right, is to define those so-called critical data elements, right? So the idea is to maybe first define together in the organization on a business level what are actually the critical elements to run the business, right? What are the data that needs to be governed, that needs to be ensured with high quality to actually do things? and don't just get started somewhere, right? Get started with somewhere that is meaningful and that is important for the people, right? And to then basically continue from there. Yeah.
Oh, I guess what I meant to say is yes, Aaron, 100%. Baby steps, start small, think big, be actionable. But again, if you're going to have to do it, it's almost not worth it to do it at all. So something to think about there. Any thoughts? Let's see if on the next quote, no thoughts. So we're going to jump into this one. I love this scene. But this idea of stay on target. So a great segue from what we were just talking about. When we have the gold 5 target leader during the Battle of Yavin. Yep, would love. Let's see. Let's dive into it. What do you think? Oop. I think you're muted. So sorry.
Yes. Now better.
There we go. We're good.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I was about to say that stay on target truly is an inspirational quote because it can apply to so many things as well, right? But I think in a really data governance sense, to be goal driven and to not lose the objective of it all is really important. And I would say that when you go to data governance and you are exploring all of the challenges and all of the problems that might be there, it's easy to get distracted, right? To follow a rabbit hole of something that you want to investigate deeper and deeper. But let's never forget what it is for, right? In the end, you want data to be used and to be in high quality, to be trustworthy, right? So do exactly enough things to do that, but not more, because everything else might be not even that irrelevant anymore, right? So really staying on target, I think, is really key.
And I think something we had spoke about previously too, and we'll bring it back to the movie, but just as like the rebel pilots had to stay focused on destroying the Death Star, like what is your mission? I think data governance does it as well, right? Like as a people, you can throw tech at governance, and yes, good technology needs to be in place, but I think it's also almost just as much, if not more, like a people problem as well. And so when you have everyone stay on target, working towards that same kind of consistent, reliable goal, is really key, but also like the communication part of it, right? Like making sure people understand what they're working towards and why, and what are the updates that are happening with that as well. I think that's really key to making sure the group is working together to achieve that common goal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. All right, we're on. Oh yeah, yep. Stay focused, work towards those goals. Clear alignment and communication, I think, is very, very key here as well. I think this might be my favorite. We love a villain, but this key quote: "I find your lack of faith disturbing." Let's translate that into data governance.
Yes. So, I mean, in a way, as for many initiatives in the company, you need that buy-in, right? You need people to believe in it and to see the value in it too. And especially when it comes to data governance, it's too often still perceived as a cost center rather than a value generation center, right? And the key is really that data governance is an enabling function, right? And it's not supposed to just eat more costs and then become a black hole. It's really there to make incremental more revenue, or even increasingly more saving costs over time as well. So really that motivation of "I find your lack of faith disturbing" should be turned around into "how can I increase your faith in it," right? So that is a little bit the key message there. And I think one key of that is, of course, to get the senior leader buy-in and stakeholder buy-in, right? Because you need somebody on the higher level to believe in it, but also your collaborators to believe in it, to really drive it forward.
I think that really, to me, is key. Like this idea of without that buy-in, without that, again, back to like clear communication, the data governance either strategy you propose, the technology you want to put in place, or the way you want to go about that, implementing and change management, everything that goes into that, you need everyone on board to do that, to build that faith. And I think what I really liked about this quote is it's not just like faith internally into the technology, the strategy, the way that you're doing this, right? It's also like faith and trust in your data. I think something we see more and more is that consumers really do care, and they're more aware of what the heck's happening with their data. So that faith idea, I think, really goes both ways, right? Internal and external. And so when you think back to the potential dark side of data collection into customer data, like, I think this idea, while, of course, coming from Darth Vader is an interesting concept, is important to think about in the grand scheme of your data governance strategy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Absolutely.
And feel free to chime in what your thoughts are, how you read this quote, how maybe you're applying this to your data governance strategy within your organization, or any questions that you have as well. I think the more we can make this a fun and open conversation, the better. And for all of you Star Wars geeks out there, like, please let me know that I'm not alone here. I appreciate it. All right. We're going to our next quote. The good Yoda: fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. What do we think?
Yeah. I would say, right, the main source of fear is usually the unknown, right? So usually because you don't know what's in the dark or what's going to happen, that is where fear comes from. And I think in data governance terms, the antidote to fear is really transparency and accountability, right? To let everybody know where the data comes from, how the data is being taken care of, what data is accessible, what isn't accessible, who's responsible for it, who can you talk to about the data. Those are really key concepts there. But the other way around is we can also use fear to prevent issues more, right? So if we are afraid of the future, then instead of sitting there and waiting for bad things to happen, let's take it into our own hands and prevent actively of bad things from happening, right? And the more you can actually prevent issues, the cheaper it is to face the issues too, because we all know that cleaning up things afterwards is always more expensive than to avoid the mess in the first place. So I think that is really the key here.
I think that is so hugely important. I think what we're seeing more and more as all of these new, laws and regulations and things come into play within like the regulatory environment, I think it is, it's important. Like, yes, as a consumer and as a B2B tech person, like, there is that layer of more things are coming, and I think this is just the start. So like the APRA, basically the GDPR for the US. I think that may come into play. We're already seeing that at a statewide level. And that isn't to say, to spark fear or concern, but I do think that point of like being proactive, being prepared so that you are setting yourself up for success and not having to pay those costly fines, if you get to that point. And what I like to say is, I don't want you to be another, headliner in the news, right? This data breach, this data leak, like, we want to prevent that happening so that everyone, again, on both sides, internal and external, can sleep at night, can feel good that the data is protected, and that you're doing this like up front from the moment the data is being collected, instead of attempting to clean it up downstream when it's a problem. So this idea of fear, fear of data breaches, fear of the trust or the quality or the privacy of your customer data, like, that can all hinder some of the efforts, I think, that goes into data government, is that fear. But like, to overcome that and really move forward with a clear strategy is really critical here. So when we're thinking about what this quote means to us, I think you did it spot on. Being proactive and keeping that transparency piece is key. The other thing I would say, and I would love your thoughts as well, is like, while there are some options for either data governance solutions or privacy centric kind of data collection efforts, even in those cases, I feel like transparency is lacking in some sense, right? There is kind of unclear of like, what are you actually doing with my data, right? I don't know if you've experienced the same thing. Maybe it's just me, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think not only is the transparency not always given, even when the transparency is formally given, right? As in by accepting these cookies, right? The data is going to be used for blah, 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 blah. You might not even be skeptical about it, right? So you have the feeling that it might not be actually only be used for this, but for more. So to really be proactive more about creating that trust, I think there just needs to be more communication and more of an effort to be transparent, right? And I think the only way to really gain trust for dealing with data well is maybe by showing that, for example, at the end of the year, we had 0 data breaches and all of your data was protected. And you can be, you're welcome that we helped you protect all of your data, for example, right? Instead of only talking about the negative impact of, oh no, sorry, we had a data breach. Talk also about that you didn't have one. That is a success on its own, right? So I think that could be really a way to communicate it better too.
I really love that. I can't wait. We're gonna get to the end of the year and we're gonna see all of these like congratulations, no data breaches this year. And I'm here for it. I am here for it. Like you're right. That's what I want to see. And I'm not sure I'm trying to think of examples where I've seen a company really celebrate that. And I'm not sure that I have. So I think that's a really great idea. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. I love this one as well. You can't stop the change any more than you can stop the suns from setting. I mean, it doesn't get much clearer than that. You're asking me, but yes, how do we master, how do we apply this to data governance?
Yeah. I wish I could be as epic in what I'm saying about data governance as Star Wars quotes. No, but I mean, generally, we all know that data governance is about change, right? And usually it's a change that is unexpected by everyone else. So in a way, if we introduce a new policy in data governance that is about data privacy, for example, then it's a lot of efforts to change the way how we deal with personal information, right? So all of a sudden you have to obfuscate or mask it or anonymize it, and you have to make all of the changes. And usually they're not being planned for, they're rather being efforts that have to be taken on top to make these things happen. So I think the way to deal with this is to basically work on solutions and processes that can accommodate the changes, because the changes are not going to stop, right? Even if you internally try your best to not change, which I doubt is going to happen because you always want to grow, right? External factors are going to drive change too, right? Like, for example, regulations, or for example, the hype around AI, for example, right? So you are not getting around it. So rather investing into scalable processes that are adaptable and flexible to then actually be part of the change and to adapt to the change is going to be much more useful to them than staying rigid and then always having to make efforts to adapt.
I think that is absolutely a huge piece of the puzzle. I think, what is it? The only thing that's constant is change in this world. Not Star Wars quote, but also very much applicable here. And I think I think this year more than any other year, we're seeing this kind of forcing function, for better or for worse, that companies have to prioritize or reprioritize some of their data governance things that maybe they've put off in the past. I don't know if you've seen this on your end as well in terms of like actual implementation or like investment going into certain solutions like this. But again, kind of one reprioritizing, but like making the smart right investments up front. I'm not sure if that's something you've seen as well. I know we keep hearing about it on our end.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the technology aspect, but also the process aspect to it all anyway, right? And I feel like technologies are anyway most of the time more easy to adapt nowadays anyway, because they're following the changes of the industry. But usually it comes down to a people problem, right? That people don't want to change. And then people are finger pointing at each other that you should change. No, I should change. No, they should change. And then you never get to the change actually, because you're just making each other responsible. So you need that culture as well to be changing, and that strategy as well. Yeah.
Spot on. It takes a village, right, to make this actually work. But I would say the upside across the board for you, for your company, for your customers is really worth that. And again, the key point for me here in what you're saying is find a solution that can adapt and be flexible, one with the regulations, but also with the needs of the organization. Like you mentioned, as your data gets bigger, as your teams get bigger, like you need a solution that can grow and adapt with you. And I think that's really important to think about within data governance as well. You don't want to just do point solutions to make sure you're dealing with one thing at a time, like get it all done at once and really focus on kind of making things clean at the source and not necessarily at every specific unique downstream place or downstream team. So I think that's really a key part of the conversation as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And with that, I think we have a little bit of a treat to keep you all excited halfway. So I don't know if everyone here knows, but Tiankai is an incredible musical artist in his own right, with really, really creative ideas and really fun ways to make data governance interesting. So we're going to highlight a little bit of that right now.
Yo, did you ever wonder what data governance is all about? Well, listen up. DATA, letters that we live by. In a world that's digital, we chose the data life. Enterprise-wise, the data flows left and right. We are the ones who keep it all in our sight. Rules, policies, principles, guidelines. Not the most sexy, but better than the stop signs. Working the segue between business and tech. One foot in each world, all data in check. Data quality, data quality. No day goes by without this terminology. We know end-to-end how data works best. We set up the rules and the business does the rest. Governance of data, defect terminators. Good data comes first and the rest will follow later. We know what is right, so let's make the data flow. We're role models of excellence. Let's govern it, let's go. Still not.
So that's a little bit of a teaser for everyone here. I'll make sure you have the link, but follow him as well.
Yo.
These are really fun and really entertaining to listen to, but also really interesting and pulling from years of great experience, both at Thoughtworks, Adidas, and some other companies as well. So I always like bringing that to the forefront, because to make this interesting and engaging is one thing, and to really have that expertise to back behind it is really awesome as well. So encourage everyone to take a look, check that out, because there are some really great and kind of really catchy tunes in there as well. So with that, I want to bring this all together. Really, why are we talking about this? Why is it important? How should you think about it within your organization? So something to think about here to take with you is this idea of like data governance, data privacy, data and compliance, all of these things, right? A lot of these layer into your users and their consent, right? Whether that's implicit or explicit consent, we are here to respect and protect your users' preferences at regardless of, what those preferences might be at that one-to-one level. And so there's three pillars that we think about here at MetaRouter, right? There is this idea of consent collection and consent management, right? You're collecting that consent, and then you're managing it as their preferences change and get updated. But of course, because we're looking at, May the 4th or the Force be with you, there is this key pillar of consent enforcement. So when I say consent enforcement, I'm really talking about this idea of making sure that those user preferences that you've collected and that you manage are enforced up front, so that anytime that customer data flows into downstream systems, right? We're thinking marketing platforms, analytic platforms, CDP, whatever that might be, that consent is flowing throughout all of those pipelines into those different places, so that the user's consent is respected throughout your entire vendor ecosystem by managing that enforcement upfront. So I want to call this out as a really key pillar when you're thinking about, okay, what do I do to make sure I am proactive about compliance and consent, right? This is one of the key ways to do this. So whether you're working with like a CMP, like OneTrust, or even some kind of like in-house consent tooling, we can help you make sure that your data collection strategies align with those consent categories and those consent strategies, so that you are making sure that you respect your users' consent throughout the entire ecosystem. And then this idea that we've really talked about this whole time, and Tiankai, I would love to hear your thoughts as well, but this really important idea of like protecting this data up front, whether that's data quality, the compliance, the accuracy, right? We talk about getting it right at the point of collection. So the moment that data is collection, it is cleaned up, it is transformed, it is enriched in route in real time. Again, when it powers these tools, that it is compliant, it's secure, it's ready to go. Would love to get your thoughts, Tiankai, on kind of this strategy, this more newer, I guess, way of thinking, and what that might mean from a data governance perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, I think best practice in data governance is always to fix problems at the source, right? And in many times the problem originates at the source, right? So basically, when you collect the data, something wrong already happens, and then you only notice it when it's far too late and it's already cascaded down to all the other systems. So I think really catching it on time at the source and to fix it there in a more technology-enabled way is really great. So this is definitely the way forward.
I love it. So to sum it all up, of course, and we have this lovely quote from you as well, is really this idea of like, we as an industry need to move from being reactive to really being proactive. And some ways you can do that is streamlining your data collection strategies, making sure that things are cleaned up at the source before they get to any downstream vendor. And like really this idea that we want to make sure that the data you're collecting is used in the way that you have intended it to and that your users are expecting it to, right? We don't want any of this data to get to downstream vendors if that's not a part of the equation that your users have identified. So as an industry, we are working very much towards this idea of being proactive, cleaning things up at the source, and making sure that your data governance efforts not only are effective, but also scalable. So as you grow, as you get bigger teams, as you get more data, that can all be handled with the same tooling. And so with that, I would love to open it up to any questions that we might have from the group here joining us live. I think I see one. Okay. This is the first one we've got. What is your top tactical tip for getting data governance right? Good question. What do you think? Right.
So,
where do we start, right?
I would say the very initial step to get data governance right is that you're solving an actual problem, right? So I would say that that means that before you even apply any of the methods or any of the concepts of data governance, identify the problem that somebody is facing in the day-to-day, and that has an actual estimated business impact and some clear requirements, right? And you could probably look into your organization and look at everybody who's frustrated with data, and then filter out by those that have a clear impact that they can show and the requirements they can talk about, and then go for that one to start it. I think that is at least the right impulse. Getting it right might take a few tries, which is why doing it a little bit more smaller, use case based, to then learn from it and then adapt it accordingly will lead you to the right way. But chances are you're going to start not in the completely the right way. So I would not be afraid, and as we quoted before, not overthink it too much, right? Get it started in the way you think is right, but apply it to something concrete. And when you have value, you know what you learned from it to then tailor it towards the right direction.
Yep, I would absolutely agree with that. Actually, a good segue into the next question we have here, which is, so we've kind of talked about the best way to get started. Start small, don't overthink it, right? Talk to the people that are having, concerns about this. Interesting question, kind of follow up here is, what type of technology should I start with? That's a good one.
I mean, honestly, I think my first answer would be that data governance doesn't start with tech. Data governance starts with agreements on a human side, right? So you first have to agree on what is important and what data quality is defined and what the data security levels are defined, etc. But if I would start with one technology for data governance, I probably would start with a data catalog, right? So it would be more towards first inventorizing and shining transparency on it to know what data you have, where the data comes from, and to create there. And from there, you might need other tools like a data quality tool or a data manipulation tool or a master data management tool, etc. Those are different ones that are also related to it. But I think that the data catalog probably is the best way to get started.
I think that's a great, I was even thinking past that. I think that's even more foundational. I was going to say like a consent management platform if we don't already have one, but that's even more foundational. You're right. Like understanding, just understand what's going where too, right? Like understand how you're, of course I'm going to talk data collection, but like, how are you tracking this data? How are you collecting that data? Where the heck is it going? Like, if you don't even know that foundationally, where that, who's tracking what and where it's going, that's kind of a red flag to start with, right? To have that basic understanding, to document it, to have those conversations up front, and then talk to people that are, already seeing either concerns or having challenges in, data accessibility is probably a whole nother conversation, but that's a part of the puzzle too, right? That's something to consider too. So I think that's a really good starting point when thinking about technology specifically.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like we've got one more at least. What do people get wrong the most?
Oh, there's so many things to get wrong. No, I'm kidding.
Where do we start?
No, I think maybe, we addressed it already partially, right? So I think when you try to boil the ocean at the beginning, right? And you're trying to apply it to too big of a scope, you're never getting started, right? You're always just tackling all of the things all at once, and then it's very hard to actually show impact. So I would always start smaller and then roll out. Something else probably that's wrong is if you treat it as like a one-off project. So instead of thinking as it as something that's long-term, because requirements towards data are changing, so data governance has to keep up with it. You treat it as okay, I'm going to implement this tool, I'm going to set up these roles, and then we're done with data governance forever. But that's not the case, right? So it's always a long-term investment, and it's something you should just also consider that way, and that you have the right expectations towards it as well. And lastly, that data governance is only a tool. That is also not wrong. I know that many tools call themselves also, they even have governance probably in their name sometimes, but it's not a tool, right? Somebody has to still use it. A tool is always just something that is amplifying and making human tasks more productive. So you still need human beings to actually do it. So I would not only think about tools when you think about data governance, but really the organization around it too.
I think that's huge. I have to say, I think I saw one of your conversations on like humanizing data governance.
Yeah.
I think was part of the conversation. And I think that that can't be understated. Like you said, sometimes we think in terms of like, you know, risk and like events, right? Like this event does this and like very technical, which I think when you can't throw tools at a problem and expect it to work.
Exactly.
Have to have that a lot. I mean, everything we talked about today, right, is kind of like what to think about when starting those conversations so that you don't get it wrong, right? Don't overthink it. Be proactive, overcome your fear, get that executive alignment, be transparent, and start small, go big. So I'm going to real quick have a little shout out for Erin here because I want to reiterate this, like, yeah, baby steps all the way. Like it takes a village and you have to start small to go big. And I think the other thing you mentioned 100% is like, it's not a one and done. And we don't want you to like have another regulation come up, another, you know, state specific, nationwide, whatever it might be, come up, and then companies not know how to react or respond because they're trying to catch up. They're always, you know, on that hamster wheel, just trying to catch up, and we don't want that either. So that's what we're here to help do. You know, that's what we want to be as resources for everyone here to really focus on. Hey, how can we make sure that you guys are prepared with these changes to adapt, to be flexible, to do all the things that we know and love about data governance in the right way. So with that, I encourage everyone, please reach out to us, connect with us on LinkedIn, whatever we can do to help to support you in your data governance efforts. We are here to help. So with that, you know, thank you all for joining. Tiankai, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for nerding out with me on early Star Wars Day. I appreciate it.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Cool. Bye-bye.
Bye.